short term, absolutely. Let's maximize this incredible basketball. Let's make sure that the building is full and we're doing different things. And that's part of prep work too, right? Like you got to start with your big chunks and then fill up. So the full season memberships, the partial plans, those 5-game packages, and then last minute fills with our student rush program or our single game, so there's all these different levers that you pull to make that full arena experience. But then hopefully it's people come and they've enjoyed a game and they become a Bucks fan. And it's more than the wins and the losses. It's a connection to the ethos of the team, the pride in the city, the way that the organization operates, because that sits on top of everything in our mission to be the most diverse and inclusive organization in all of sports and entertainment.
Welcome. It's Over A Pint Marketing. Kurt, I'm totally excited about this. I'm excited and nervous again. Another one.
You were nervous yesterday.
I know I was. I really was.
What's going on with you, Pat?
I'm nervous today because this is an area, it sounds super cool, super interesting. I don't know a lot about it. I'm so fascinated to talk to Mallory and get her opinions on what's going on, how she does what she does, how she got in the space. What's it like to be a woman in this space? We're talking to Mallory Steinberg, the director of marketing for the Milwaukee Bucks. Is that correct, Mallory? Director, do I have the director?
That's it. You got it.
Fantastic. Director of marketing for the Milwaukee Bucks. That is a huge, huge position. I'm psyched to be here with you today. I'm so glad you just said, yes, you'll be on the podcast. Joining me, as always, is Mr. Kurt Lingle. Kurt is the VP over at Celtic Advertising, a full-service agency located in Milwaukee's 3rd Ward. You got me, Pat McGovern, Director of New Biz Development over at Acedia. And joining us is Mallory Steinberg. Mallory, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. And you know what? Full transparency, we'll all admit our nerves, right? Like that's being vulnerable as a leader to say, hey, I'm a little nervous about this too. So we're going to see where it goes.
Well, thank you.
I love that. Look at that. Wow. This is going to be good, man. I already just came off firing.
This is going to be great. Let's get right into it, guys, so we can get right into the questions and so forth. Mallory, we got a little tradition on the show. It's called Over a Pint for a reason. Are you enjoying anything that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I sure wish I was, but I wouldn't be in marketing if I didn't bring something with me, right? So listeners won't be able to see it, but we partnered with Michelob Ultra. So I have our custom Bucks branded can here that I had to bring it with me. So just to get the vibes, get the right feel going. So little Mick Ultra with a Bucks flair on it. Otherwise some water, which is
nice.
Less exciting.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
What are you guys drinking?
Well, Mallory, yesterday we interviewed Paul Verdue from Wisconsin Brewing, and he was telling us all about his time working on the Modelo brand. And we had someone from Modelo on last year. So I do like this brew. I thought it would be fitting. I'd bring Modelo with me to promote that. But I have one more prop too. This is not a beverage, but I knew we were bringing Mallory on, Pat, and Bucks and basketball. So I want to promote this. In my office, I love games. I have toys, Mallory. And I don't know if people can see, this is the old Mattel Electronics. Here. Do you hear that? That's my little basketball video game that's in my office. That's what I'm playing here. It's a hoops game. And that's it. So that's what I'm promoting, Pat.
Awesome.
Mattel Electronics.
Awesome.
And beer.
Fantastic. How old is that, man?
Oh, Pat, I've got all sorts in my office. I got this. I've got the old football one, baseball. I've got a Slinky. I got toys everywhere. But I wanted to bring this on just because I thought, you know what?
That's awesome.
I don't know.
Awesome.
I just
a classic.
Yeah, classic.
I'm going back to where I was yesterday. Again, Yankee, the Yankee IPA from Wisconsin Brewing. There we go, right there. Good, yeah, it's a good beer. Thanks to Paul for being on yesterday. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. All right, we got that. Wrapped up. Mallory, why don't you start this train moving and talk to us a little bit about just you and how the heck you got into sports marketing, right? Give us that kind of lowdown, will you?
Sure. Well, it starts, I grew up in the shadows of Lambeau Field. So I'm born and raised in Appleton, actually Darboy is where I grew up, just outside of Appleton. So kind of grew up in that right era of Brett Favre and winning the Super Bowl, and just kind of that excitement, right? Like you weren't a Wisconsinite in the 90s, you were a fan of the Packers in the 90s because of the excitement. So that hit. I'm also one of three girls, and I did not play sports. I mean, I am all of 5'2", so my basketball career stopped in about the 5th grade. But I always, loved being around it, had an opportunity to bond with family around sports. So that's that little bug that kind of gets things started. And then I went to Marquette University here in Milwaukee, knew that there was access to sport in coming to a little bit bigger city, and pursued a degree, a double major in advertising and PR and minors in marketing and Spanish. So kind of that combo, but while at Marquette, listened to different speaking groups. One was the Public Relations Student Society of America. They brought in a former Marquette alumna, and she had interned with the Packers. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. That sounds pretty cool. And she talked about her experience being great, and she got free shoes. So cool perk. Right. and it led me a little bit down that path to explore it further. So I just sent out these, cold messages to sports teams in the area. I'm a sophomore at Marquette at that point, just reaching out for whatever experience I could get. And the first team that responded back was the Milwaukee Wave. So the professional indoor soccer team here. And, they invited me to come in. I thought it was an interview. Really, it was, hey, we could use your help. Stay for tonight's game. And it just built from there. Gosh. So it was, taking that experience and building on it. And so, I had sent out all those cool letters without really any experience. And then later on, after learning more through the Wave and turning that into an actual internship program, I did apply to join the Packers as a summer intern and interviewed for that opportunity. And they brought me on board. And that was the position wasn't posted, but I sent in the cover letter, sent in the resume, and it got to the right folks. And it kind of all went from there. So that was the start for me, where it was that inspiration, but then it was, okay, how can I make this happen for myself? And it was kind of pre-LinkedIn and just did the old-fashioned letter outreach as well as email outreach.
Wow.
So that started the path.
There's a lesson right there.
Yeah, that's that's so interesting. Mm-hmm. And Mallory, just to give us some, I want to, the question I'm going to ask is so we could compare and contrast like where you're at now versus what you were doing when you were kind of with the Wave and then kind of coming up through the ranks. Talk to us about just day to day. What was your life like as an intern, and what were you kind of doing?
Yeah, so at the Wave game, I think the biggest thing that I would say to anybody that wants to get involved in the sports and entertainment industry is be willing to do whatever. That was what helped me get my foot in the door. And then it's continuously showing up and proving that you're capable so that you can take on that additional responsibility. So with the Wave, it started just with supporting some of the press responsibilities on game night and ensuring, that there was some stats coverage, faxing out information or emailing out some of the stat lines at the end of the game to make sure it got to media. Right. And I kept showing up that it became a point where I was writing the recap, the game story, and offering different suggestions on how to share that through the website and what we sent to media to, recap the entire game. And from there, it was bringing on some of the corporate social responsibility or community relations elements and tying that together. And just kind of wherever I could find space, I was going to, prove that I was capable of it and interested in doing more and learning more. And that's true today too.
Okay. So Mallory, give us the, so you're kind of coming up through the ranks, you Wave, Packers. Mm-hmm. How did you connect then? How did you get to the Bucks? Yeah.
Sure. So the short story of how I ended up here is connections, right? Sure. Marketing is a small world, but sports marketing is even smaller.
I got it. Yep.
So lots of, folks know folks within the industry. So that's the short story. The long story is there was a winding path between those internships into where I am today. And it's not totally linear. You hear about a career path, and mine was a jungle gym with ups and downs and steps backwards. And, it was all part of the process for me. So during my senior year at Marquette, I applied for this position that was posted on the NFL's website. It was called a blue chip program at the time, and now it's their junior rotational program. Saw it online, didn't really understand what it was, but I'm like, what the heck? Go for it, right?
Right.
So put my application in, and then I got a outreach from the league office saying, hey, do you want to come to New York to interview for this program? And my dad's like, you have to pay to go to New York to interview for this thing. And fortunately, I had a good friend that was like, yeah, and I'll come with you. Let's go do this. So went out a senior in college, and it was a 2-day process, which I don't know if you all have been part of these types of interviews where it was day one. If they like you, they call you back for day 2. Totally intimidating. And they tell you what time they're going to call you by. So you're just like watching the phone the entire time.
My gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was at a theater show, like silence your phones and everything. I'm in New York. I'm like, I might as well have a good time. Like, if I don't get this opportunity, like, we're going to have fun. And I got the message. So I got invited back for day 2. Needless to say, long story longer, I started my career after college, moving out to New York to join the National Football League in their junior rotational program. So that was a program where a lot of companies are doing this now, right? You spend 6 to 9 months. It's to gain kind of that cross-sectional, total understanding, 360 perspective of a business. So I packed up my bags, went from the Little Apple in Appleton, Wisconsin, to the Big Apple in Manhattan. And that's where I started my career. So that's move 1, right? And there's been a bunch of different maneuvering along the way. I came back to Wisconsin. I worked at an agency on the PR side and missed sports. So moved right along to Fox Sports Wisconsin, which is now Bally Sports Wisconsin, the broadcast partner for the Brewers and the Bucks. So really that taste of local sports again. Then the next step is seeing that the Bucks were starting a minor league team, the G League. They didn't have a name at that point, in my backyard in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And I had never started a team from the ground up. So took that opportunity and just ended up at Titletown with the Packers and their community development there. And it was a call while I was in Green Bay from my current manager at the Bucks, who said, hey, we're rebuilding, restructuring our team after COVID, and we thought you'd be a great fit. Any chance you're interested? So lots of stops along the way, lots of different experience. But that's kind of all of the pieces that added up to my role here at the Bucks.
Wow.
Yeah, wow is right. So, Mallory, you strike me as, you said so many things there, but there's one thing I want to hang on to is you said the marketing is a small community, sports marketing is even smaller, right? So you connect with people. Was that intentional? Did you, once you got to New York, or even before that, was one of your things that, hey, I'm just going to try to connect with people? You seem to have that kind of, that understanding of how the game is played. Like, I got a cold email, I got a cold outreach, I got to do these types of things, I got to be there all the time, I've got to show up. Did you also kind of have that idea that, you know what, I need to have my network of people, because who knows where it's going to lead to?
Somewhat, I would say. I'm a first generation college student too. So my parents didn't go to college. So I think, part of it was figuring it out along the way and, navigating this path too, in terms of how do you break into an industry when you don't know anybody? Well, you got to knock on a lot of doors to try to get one to open. And then once it does, it's, okay, how do I make sure that I am making the most of this experience? And then also about building a network, I don't know that it was always intentional in that way, but it's a curiosity about people and a genuine interest in creating connections and understanding the unique value that each person brings. So that has served me well. And there are a ton of great folks that I've been able to meet along the way.
Mallory, a couple things. There's a couple things that I've heard, themes, if you will, buckets as I've jotted down. It's interesting. So you've known your lane, whether you overtly knew it or subconsciously, you knew that lane from the start. And that's something that not all of us do. So you're lucky when you know that lane and you went after it. But networking, it's funny how you describe networking. And I love how you said that. We've had so many people on the podcast and we talk to people in our industry, and it's like, sometimes it's not necessarily, it shouldn't be defined by a word. It's just something we do when you do it for the right reasons, like helping people, building connections. That's really what it is at the core. A lot of people think it's a dirty word. I'm networking. But what I like about you said knocking on the door, and it's interesting because I think in business, it's like there are a lot of knocks, and sometimes the right decision is not to answer. Everyone thinks, well, when there's a knock on the door, you got to answer, right? Well, no, sometimes you have to know when to knock or when to open the door or not. You've guessed right. And I'm listening to the dots you're kind of, puzzling. Pat, I don't know if you picked, but it's like, it seems like very smart decisions. You opened the door, you answered the knock at the right time. And that just kind of helped parlay you, even though, like you said, there might have been some side steps, but it's been interesting because I've heard stories too where someone heard the knock and they opened the door and they shouldn't have. Or do you understand what I'm saying? But it's just interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you for that reflection. I think it is interesting, right? And like, I will admit that not every step along the way has been perfect, but it's then you're able to course correct, and it's recognizing when that moment comes. I'm out in New York and I am in what some folks might consider a dream job, working for the National Football League. Like, how does it get better in sport than working for the NFL? And that was an opportunity that I walked away from, right? And I recognized as a 20-something that, this New York grind is real. And, I need to take care of me as a person too, and figure out what that means. My family's here in Wisconsin and the Midwest, and what does it look like to build a life, and think about some of those things. And that's not an easy decision. And that's not a decision that felt 100% perfect in the moment. But it was kind of recognizing and checking in with yourself about, okay, here are some different, and that there were other opportunities, to your point, Kurt, along the way where, I had a different offer and it didn't feel right, to join a team in another large market. And it was early on in my career, and, just some of the different, whether it was the role, the team itself, or, the salary considerations of what it means to be supporting yourself when you're making these moves, like all of those things factor into whether or not it feels like the right opportunity. And it certainly would have changed the path, but I go confidently in the direction that I'm in. You love the one you're with, and you make the best of that situation. And then you check in and you recognize if something needs to change, and take the steps to try to do that.
Let's segue now and get you at the Bucks, right? So now you're at the Bucks. So Mallory, break it down for us. What's your world like? Like, I think, Kurt, you have a pretty good understanding. Like when we were talking to Paul yesterday, he's moving beer. I kind of understand the what he's kind of going through. Do I understand everything? No. But Mallory, what is your day-to-day when it comes to sports marketing? What is it like? I don't really have a good understanding of what a marketer does in a professional basketball, or but it could be NFL, it could be whatever. But in your case, basketball. So break that down for us, will you, please?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting to understand kind of the landscape of what marketing looks like at the Bucks. And that starts with our CMO, Dustin Godsey. So he oversees a pretty large department. Our brand and marketing squad, as we call ourselves, is pretty small but mighty. But the larger marketing department that sits within the entire organization is larger, right? So I think it's understanding kind of each of those different columns, pillars, departments, whatever you want to call them, that level up under marketing. And then I can speak to a little bit of what I do. So we have our brand side. So that includes like all of our designers. We have in-house designers that are incredible. We have a video team, motion graphics, all of that. And that sits under the brand, as well as, what I do with my squad. And we do everything from our fan affinity programs, overseeing like our student rush or our kids club. We work with our ticketing team to support all sorts of ticket sales, right? So that's your during the season single game, but it's everything from your full ticket package to a partial. We work with our partnerships team on anything that they would need to support those relationships, those partnerships, including our giveaways. So that's something that I'm working on right now. That's kind of fun. Like, what are we going to give away to our fans next season? What are the theme nights to celebrate with fans? So that's a little taste into our world, but we oversee what the brand looks like, feels like, and kind of those different elements. There is a database group. So they oversee all of the data that we have about different fans so that we can make sure we are sending the correct messages to the right folks at the right time, whether that's about ticketing or new coach announcement or Bucks Pro Shop. Then there's a digital team. So we have bucks.com, our website, all of our social handles, everything that they're doing and innovating in the digital space. So that's 3. There's 2 more departments that sit under it. So our live programming and events, Bingo is on the marketing team for the Milwaukee Bucks, our grand dancers, everybody that makes our game come alive, and all of the animation, graphics, all of those things that you see. And then we have an arena marketing team. So since the Bucks own and operate Fiserv Forum, we've got a crew that's dedicated to promoting everything that's happening in Deer District, as well as all the shows. So my little section of it, we work across every single one of those departments, plus the majority of other departments within the organization. We're writing the copy for the email, we're making the marketing plan. So there are some really traditional elements, but it's just tailored to the product that we get to work on, which is Bucks basketball. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, Mallory. And so I'm hearing there's a number of different areas within the overall marketing. And given that you've got so many different areas, you've got the in-house kind of entertainment, you've got tickets, you've got database, you've got the digital, you've got the creative side of it, right? That's produced a lot of things. I'm hearing all this sounding very impressive, but also sounds like, okay, how do you coordinate all this? How do you keep all the, everybody in line? Because there's a lot of different components and varied components, right?
Absolutely.
What's the trick on that?
You're spot on in that. And I would say for the particular team that I'm a part of, the 2 skill sets, that 2 elements that would be most important is like a curiosity, creativity element and mad project management skills. So we have some in-house tools that we use to help organize in terms of request processes. I think lots of folks have those at their organization, but really there are short-term, urgent, emergent type of projects. There are midterm projects, and especially during the season, right? Like there's a cadence, and you got to get things done for a game day, or the game day's passed, right? Like you missed your opportunity, so you better course correct for that next opportunity. There are the longer term, season long, where we're planning ahead for our Hoops for Troops game or our Pride game. And then if you're really fortunate and you can carve up that little bit of time, you're thinking on the strategy level of like 3 to 5 years. And that lives within our team too. Like, how do we continue to evolve our brand? Like, how do we make sure that we're growing our fan base, but also nurturing the fans that already exist, whether they are local or if they're international and they will never step inside Fiserv Forum. So there's a lot of different considerations and a lot of moving parts.
Mallory, you strike me. Pat had asked the question about, the types of, the type of DNA that really has to be in people to work for the Bucks and in the marketing department. And you outlined, you said, well, we're all curious / creative. That's important. And we got mega project management skills. you strike me in as a doer. And I almost look at that as a third bucket. And I mean that as a compliment, a doer.
Sure.
It's like things move pretty fast. And you said earlier, it's like, we're small, but we're mighty. It's like, you know what? That's a skill in itself. Because I've worked at organizations where there were a lot of people that were really good at sitting around and thinking. We're going to think, and we're going to think, and we're going to think, and we're going to dream up some really good thinking. I also worked at some other organizations where it's like, you know what? We're going to think, but we're going to do, because things move really, really fast, and it's all hands, and we're all going to be, rolling up our sleeves. I had an old boss, and she would always say, strategize with execution in mind. And I thought that was some of the best advice that anyone ever taught me, because I got it. She's like, it's like strategy is huge, but do not discount the do. And when I'm hearing you talk, I'm like, Mallory's a doer. And I bet you the people over there, they're doers. Am I speaking incorrectly? Please correct me.
No, I'm laughing to myself, and my team would appreciate this too, because there are two things that I say. I'm like, loves meetings, good at ideas. And those are the jokes, right? Because we do meet a lot, and ideas are great, but they're easy because it is where you have to execute then, right? Like, what's the next step? And like, how do we actually bring this to life? And it's thinking ahead, and sports is cyclical. We know that we will tip off the season. We know that there will be certain elements that happen every year. So it's keeping it fresh, but also taking advantage of the time, the windows, pockets that you have where you can set yourself up for success. We know we'll tip off a season. We know we'll want to celebrate that and get fans engaged with a countdown to tip off, or, just preparing for Bucks basketball to be back. The time to plan that is when you have those windows. It's not the week leading up to it. It's well in advance, so that you can do those big, cool ideas that you actually have the chance to execute on them. So yeah, it's definitely, and I think, from the top down, everyone here is really willing to roll up their sleeves and help out, which is awesome to be a part of.
Mm.
So, for someone who's looking to get into sports marketing, Mallory, what are things that you would suggest to them? Like, I would imagine, like, at some point you probably need to be fairly good at writing or understand a little bit of PR. But what other things? What you've been in the space for a while. What are things you look for when you're looking to hire people?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been specifically marketing, right? Like, I've done some a lot of event planning, communications, strictly PR, and that has served me well. But when I'm talking to someone about opportunities specifically with our team, I encourage a couple different things. Everybody is a sports fan, which is amazing. Love that passion. And that's going to help you, understand the organization and enjoy, when it's that hustle bustle time. But you need to love whichever career path you're picking. So if it's accounting, you better love accounting first, and the Bucks or sports second, or at least at a similar level, because I want someone that is passionate about marketing and has shown that in their experience, whether that's at their clubs, taking on additional leadership roles in their coursework, or whatever the case may be from a marketing standpoint. And then that interest in, and that, willingness to understand what our industry is. So I think that those things kind of come in tandem, and would encourage folks also to think outside of a team environment. I've worked in a broadcast environment with a league, with a minor league team, and now being back on the team side. So there are lots of different places that touch sports that aren't necessarily being in a team environment. So Gotcha. Those are my two pieces of advice.
Good advice.
What do you look for, Mallory? Like, what is like a home run or a slam dunk in this case for you guys? Like, during the season, I can imagine it. It's like, listen, we're trying to fill up every seat in the house, and I guess that's always the case. But, or is it? I mean, do you have to be realistic on, like, the team's really good right now, so that's easier, right, than maybe in years past, but. So I'd like to know, like, during the season, is your goal like, hey, as a collective team in marketing, we are trying to fill every seat. But now, off season, what's the goal? What are you guys focused on? Right? I just give us that understanding.
Sure. There's so much to unpack there, and you're absolutely correct, right? Like, you want to have a full arena stadium because that just creates such a great environment. And that's part of a revenue goal that everybody is accountable. You know, at the end of the day, sports is still a for-profit business. So that's
Right.
unless you're the Green Bay Packers. So, you know, that is important. But there are other things that we're thinking about too, right? So it is the brand and the experience of fans and ensuring that when they think about Bucks basketball, that they're thinking about this incredible, you know, exciting team. And it's also thinking about now we have Giannis, and you're absolutely right. Like, the Bucks have been really such a fun team to watch. But that might not always be the case, right? Like, Giannis will not play forever, even if he very well thinks he might. Like, there will be an end to that, and we need to be prepared for that time. And so, short term, absolutely, let's maximize this incredible basketball. Let's make sure that the building is full and we're doing different things, and that's part of prep work too, right? Like, you got to start with your big chunks and then fill up. So the full season memberships, the partial plans, you know, those 5-game packages, and then last minute fills with our student rush program or our single game, you know, so there's all these different levers that you pull to make that full arena experience. But then hopefully it's people come and they've enjoyed a game and they become a Bucks fan. And it's more than the wins and the losses. It's a connection to the ethos of the team, the pride in the city, the way that the organization operates, because that sits on top of everything in our mission to be the most diverse and inclusive organization in all of sports and entertainment. So,
Mallory,
lots of layers.
Yeah, you know what? I wanted to ask you two things. One is with some of the best creativity that I've seen in sports marketing, let me think how I can say this. I've always liked minor league baseball, just because when I go to a minor league game, some of the promotions, the marketing, it's so grassroots and creative because they have to. So I'd like to get your opinion on that and how that maybe your background coming up has helped. But two, I want to, if you could, from a pure marketing perspective, when you are in your meetings as a team, how do you define what it is you're selling? Because I heard, like, you know, what is it? Like, what are we, because you just were kind of going there. I'm like, gosh, she's onto something here. Like, how do you define, like, as the Milwaukee Bucks, we are in the business to sell what? What are you selling? What's the promise?
Right. I'll answer the second part and then we'll go back to the grassroots stuff, because it is so fun and wild. Yeah. So, you know, right now we're fortunate. We get to talk about championship caliber basketball. One of the things that I think is the coolest about the Bucks, they've been very upfront in what they've promised fans. Starting when, Justin, our CMO, came on board, it was own the future. We're not very good right now, but we promise you that we will be. And then there were other ethos that came along the way, built to stay. And then history in the making was actually the slogan going into the championship season. So it was like, hey, this is exciting. You're a part of something special. And then it became history made. One season, the history in the making was accomplished when, the Bucks won the championship for the first time in 50 years. So the Bucks have been pretty upfront about that promise to fans. And, I think right now we talk about be a part of every incredible moment that comes next and enjoying this moment. But we are actively planning for what that future looks like. And that involves a lot of research in terms of understanding fan perception, looking at other sports teams and making sure we stay fresh and relevant. Because there are those minor league teams that are doing just the craziest things. And it is just such a great test ground to try things out. And that's one of the things, too, about being up in Oshkosh with our G League team. The NBA uses the minor league system as a testing ground for ideas, and we can, too. The Wisconsin Herd has an opportunity to do things that as the Bucks, we don't get to do, they get to do these specialty jerseys. So they have Wisconsin Curd Night where they change their name and they're a choose curd logo instead of deer logos. Like when you don't get to do that necessarily at the major league level, but you can still take that ethos of creativity, quirkiness. And I think that's something that's part of what we do here at the Bucks too.
Mallory, how much consumer research does the marketing team do? Or, I mean, obviously you get a sense of it, like just by seats that are sold and how attendance is going. But beyond that, what do you guys do?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. We have an incredible business and analytics team that is growing, and I think everyone here understands the value of data and understanding the feedback from our fans, our season ticket holders, folks that just watch the game. So we're getting a lot of input, whether it's ratings in terms of who's watching the game on Bally Sports Wisconsin or who's streaming the game. Whether it's the fan feedback. So we have surveys that go out for fan experience after every game. So there is a constant flow of information, but I think it's taking that step back, which is, what we're in process of too, and looking at different fan groupings. We got to work with Harvard Consulting Group, and they helped us understand like some of the different fan segmentation. So it's not anything that's groundbreaking. A lot of teams are doing it, but I think it's important to stay on top of it and stay fresh with it, because a fan's journey and team perception definitely shifts with wins and losses, with different players that come in and out and things like that.
Sure. And in terms of the slogan, I'm fascinated with that. Talk to us about the process that you guys go about just getting to a slogan. Like that seems like it could take a while.
Yeah, that's fun. There's a lot that gets thrown around that never sees the light of day. Yeah. So you have to also be like willing to put it out there, and also understanding like at the end of the day, a lot of this probably won't go anywhere. But that's part of the process as well. And I think what we strive for is ensuring that the slogan is authentic, right? That if we're putting something out there, that it resonates and has an origin story within who we are as a team. So the Warriors did cold-blooded, so clever, and like gold-blooded actually was the slogan and the play on cold-blooded. And so like very clever. Teams come up with other things during playoffs, and, sometimes it feels like it could fit really to any team, right? Mm-hmm. Like change the colors, change the logo, and it could fit right over here.
Yep.
So I think that, we challenge ourselves to make sure we're being authentic in that, which is why you see Fear the Deer so often, or why you see Bucks and Six, because that is part of our DNA as an organization, that we're not just going to dream something up and put it out there. So for me, like part of that process is listening to our players, listening to our coaches, what they're saying, what's resonating. That's a starting point, because that's coming from an essential part of our team. So a long process.
I got it. Yeah, but to that extent, Mallory, is there are there trade shows? Are there events that the marketing teams in professional sports like go to share ideas and to share things like this? Best practices, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Or is it very, very kind of fiefdom? Like, hey, no, we don't want to let on things. I'm just curious about that, right?
Yeah, it depends. I've seen a little bit of everything over my career. Sometimes like the teams within a state aren't as collaborative, and sometimes they are. It just depends on the environment and the department that you're talking with. We're all fighting for a share of entertainment dollars.
Sure.
So I think everybody wants to make sure that, we're covering our space, but some departments are super collaborative. I find it really interesting to learn and leverage best practices from other teams too. Whether that's, networking with colleagues in the NBA or looking to other sports to learn best practices. So there is a combination of both, right? Like the sports business journals of the world throw different events where they bring together all different types of folks that work in sports and partnerships and things of that nature. So those happen, and then leagues bring together like departments. So, you can talk with folks from the Bulls or the Pistons or, name a team. So all of that, plus then there's all of the outside marketing learning that you can, go to a social media summit or, fill in the blank of another. So I think there's value in all of it. And I couldn't make a recommendation of what's most impactful, but we're looking at all of it for sure.
Gotcha. How much exposure do you have to the players? Right. I know that's, but I have to ask that question. It's like, do you have frequent contact with them, or is like, no, we really don't, because they've got their lives and their jobs and so forth.
Yeah, I think it varies from team to team. It also varies greatly from like what your role is within the organization. So
Sure.
In our marketing world, there's not a natural overlap outside of a few different spaces. We have a marketing and media day where we're getting a lot of our sound from players for the duration of the season. So we're planning ahead that we know, we want to capture some video for in arena, and we're going to get that at one focused time. But then there are other things. We've worked with BMO on a Bucks cap series over a handful of years. The players design those hats. So then we're sitting down in a room and we're working with them directly, providing the guidelines with which they can use and go outside some of our typical guidelines for design. So there is overlap in those spaces, but outside of that, like our day to day doesn't overlap. And
I was at the last game of the season. Unfortunately, we lost that one, but I'm always blown away, Mallory, by the in stadium experience.
Mm-hmm.
Things are moving around so fast, and there's just so many things to keep you interested.
It's fun.
It's fun. It really is. It's just amazing that like the coordination and the, just moving people back and forth and everything, and then plus you have a basketball game. Oh yeah. You have that little thing too, right?
Right.
Mallory, you've been in different areas and different venues and totally different sports. What do you see as the big differences or similarities between when you're in the football versus basketball, and what are they really, really similar? Just give us that kind of insight.
Yeah, well, the in-arena experience is totally different. In basketball, there's a lot more action, I would say, happening
For sure.
in the arena, right? At least different in my experience. Some teams do it at different levels, and our crew is incredible at what they do at really leveraging every moment to make sure that you have a blast, win or lose, right? So that at its core is quite different, but then it's the volume, right? Like, thinking about an NFL season compared with an NBA season, compared with an MLB season.
Yep.
And, just the way that there's the scarcity in the NFL of just a handful of home games. You're filling a bigger space, but there's only a few opportunities to do it. So that also minimizes the need for creativity or the ability to do a lot, right? Because you really only have these spots, 10 times during a year. Basketball, you have a bit more. And our season, there's not series in the way that there are in MLB, where you're building on a homestand of a consistent opponent or, those types of things. So I think it's understanding that is unique in each one, but also then we're probably all working with the same thing, where we want you to come and enjoy the game, and we're going to use some of the big stars to help market that and make it exciting, but then whatever else we can build on. So similar, right? Overarching, but different probably in the tactical approach and the volume, certainly.
We too our family was at a game. We love going to Bucks games, and we were at the Boston game late in the season when it did not go well. However, to put a positive spin on it, and I asked you earlier, what do you sell? Our family had a blast. My two young kids had a blast. We went home. They had so much fun. And that's when you can tell it gets back to, it's like, I think you had said earlier on, we want to win. Yes, we want to win. That's the elephant in the room, but it's about much more than product about wins and losses. It's about the experience. I think, it's like, gosh, I think about the Bucks, and there's a few other professional organizations I can think of, but they did it right. Because for me, the brand, the touch point with the brand, it starts way before I even step into Fiserv. I mean, I'm walking up towards Fiserv, and right, Mallory, you work for this organization. It's beautiful. It's just, it's like, there it is. And then you enter the Deer District. Oh, there's another brand touch point. I'm not even inside yet, and I'm getting hit with all these brand touch points. To me, it's like the experience just kind of, it's almost like what you help me out, you two. It's like, it's building like I don't know, like you know what I'm saying? But that's, to me, the Bucks have figured that out. That happens when you go to a Bucks game. And again, there's a few other organizations I can think of in different professional sports arenas where it's like, it's kind of that way. But it's unique. It really is unique.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think that's intentional, that the fan experience starts well before even, before you even buy your ticket to come to the game. So that messaging and consistency of brand matters across every element, and certainly keeps our team busy and on our toes. And, there are things that you have to react to quickly to modify, but hopefully you're building that reputation and that trust and that relationship. So, certainly that's what it is in terms of we have fans instead of clients, or instead of guests or buyers or whatever. They're fans.
Mallory, how much brand value do you think? I think about the year of the championship run. How much brand value? How much value in itself, or editorial value? You're a PR practitioner. It's like every time nationally they'd be watching the Bucks, right, around the country, the Deer District, and you would see the folks. I mean, the value that brought to the Bucks alone, and they're not even showing what's going inside Fiserv, the Deer District, thousands of people. I mean, you can't put a price on that. You can't.
Yeah, it's priceless for sure.
Pretty cool.
And also for our city, for Milwaukee.
Yes, for our city.
To help with the visibility. And that's important too. Like, we recognize that, and our players do too. The name that they play for across their chest is oftentimes, it says Milwaukee on certain uniforms that we wear. So, I think that's really an important consideration. But when your team is winning, like, that is make hay when the sun shines, right? That is the sun shining at its brightest, and was an incredible moment to be a part of. So you work in this industry, and we're all probably competitive at some level, to be in sport. And we want to win that championship, to plan a parade. Like, that was an incredible experience. And I want it again. I'm not satisfied with one. I want another one too. So, there's that competitive drive for that, but also each step in the journey, you still have to stay on top of your game. You can't make it to the postseason if you don't play hard and win in the regular season. So that's true for our front office too. You got to keep the wins going regardless of where we're at in the schedule or what's happening.
Mallory, I got one more question that I just thought of, and it's not on the list, but how important are brand partnerships to your organization? I think about the Bucks, and I think about the folks that are affiliated with the Bucks, some very successful brands themselves who are very good at marketing. And then I drill it down to think about some of the charitable outlets that you're aligned with too. And you're affiliated with winners and some very worthwhile organizations. Can you talk about like brand partnerships and what that all means to the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really important. And we have an incredible partnerships team that works hard to make sure that there's a brand halo that goes both ways, right? So the Bucks brand, we know that can impact the folks that we partner with. But likewise, in choosing to partner with them, we're saying something about ourselves too, And so I think that ultimately you find that perfect fit where you're aligned in values, vision, and also what you're hoping to do from a marketing standpoint, right? Like, at the end of the day, a lot of our partners have something that they're looking to sell, and we know that we're accountable to help move the needle for them because they are investing in some times of a quite large amount, to be a part of the Bucks organization, the Bucks family. So there's, a big process there, and our team, the partnerships team specifically, works really to make sure we're finding the right fit, that we're activating in a way that aligns for the both brands. And we get to be a part of that conversation too. And part of what we think about as we look to continue to grow is, are there partners that, are kind of that we think they're the ideal fit for us, and how do we proactively go after them as well? So, it's a bit of like a matchmaking process.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that you have to qualify at, to just like even have some of those conversations. But yeah, there's a dedicated team that works to do that. And then we get to bring some of those elements to life. We talked about some of the giveaways, which is really a fun way to extend the partnership and showcase the brand and do something unique or different. We did the dad joke bobble for last season with Giannis, where you could press it and he would tell some of the jokes that he was telling at his press conferences, and we found the right partner in Palermo's, and that made it on, some big ESPN, some of the shows. So like, there are opportunities where we can use our brand and leverage that platform, but we also do want those partners that have a really strong platform too, that it goes both ways.
Mallory, what's your week been like this week with the new coach coming on? How crazy has it been for you? Give us a little bit of insight into that. It's really exciting stuff. Yeah.
It is exciting. And that's the other incredible thing about sports, right? Like hope floats eternal. So everybody starts with the same record. There's two teams that are still battling it out. And then once that's decided, the process starts over again. So we're really excited to have Coach Griffin, and got to attend the press conference, it's just interesting to hear and kind of be a part of that moment in team history, right? Like this is where it starts, and hopefully it turns into something that's incredible and we can say we were there when. So a lot of, I feel like I'm a broken record in saying all the preparation, right? Like you can't announce a coach and just have a graphic come out of nowhere. There's work that happens on the back end that we're preparing the different templates, not me particularly, but our design crew is. And then where are we going to make sure that we have this message out there? So there's all of that prep work that once the decision is officially announced, it goes out in the world. And then how do we support our digital team to ensure they're capturing the right content, and we're getting what we need to, that we can use messaging from this moment down the road and other opportunities. So all of the prep work that really goes into it. And then there will be more to come. Each coach kind of brings their own vision and style, and, oftentimes has some different changes that they want to make. Nothing that's necessarily fan facing, as much as it is internal and getting the right message around the team. So there'll be, some work that goes into supporting that to make sure the office and the Sports Science Center looks how coach wants it to.
Yeah, sure. Mallory, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for giving us some insight into what you do and how you do it and how you go about it. I guess my last question before I give you the mic, Mallory, is you talked a little bit about where you get your influence from other kind of sporting avenues, right? To just see what other teams have got going on. Just, think about that. But what other content that you, Mallory Steinberg, consume to kind of stay up to speed on marketing and what's going on, right? To say, hey, I know this is happening over in maybe consumer packaged goods, but wow, could we apply this to sports marketing? I'd just like to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think good ideas can come from anywhere, right? And a lot of things are transferable, and that's important too. So I am an avid podcast listener and appreciate the opportunity to chat with you all and what you're doing in the marketing space, and to hear insights from other marketers. I think.
What do you listen to?
Goodness. Well, I'm the daily listener, so I want my news. I want it abbreviated. I'm part of that. Yep. TLDR, too long didn't read generation. Yep. So I like the summaries. I like to listen to a lot of Adam Grant. I think he's got some incredible insights, rethinking, right? Like just how do we listen to different business leaders? Was listening to some of Guy Raz and how I built this, to kind of break it down and listen to their insights. So hopefully somewhere in everything that we've talked about today, someone can also, pull one of those tangible insights too. Because I think, just staying fresh and cruising through different things and just to, appreciate all the work that goes into putting content out there. Y'all work hard at it and others do too. So I appreciate that and love to get to hear and learn from others. So thank you.
Mallory, thank you so much. You have got the last word. You're the guest. Mallory, how do people reach out to connect with you? This is your time. Take it. Do what you want with it.
Sure. Well, thank you for the platform. I think LinkedIn is a great spot to find me. And I always encourage anyone that's connecting, send me a note so I understand where you're coming from and what you want to connect about. Those blind LinkedIn invites where you're like, how do I even know you? So I think that's a great way. And then you can see the full winding path that got me to where I am today. And, I think we didn't talk about it a ton, but one of the things that I'm most passionate about sport and our industry is our platform to do good, and we talked about the partnership halo, but there's also the opportunity to lift up other organizations specifically from a nonprofit standpoint. And so I love that we get to celebrate all of our fans. And that's one of the things that I'm most proud about and most passionate that I get to do, in terms of different theme nights, but more than that, celebration nights that recognize communities that are Bucks fans and shining the spotlight on whether that's our LGBTQ plus community or, through our Black History Month night, Women History, being a woman in this industry, which has evolved and changed over that time and will continue to do so. And I know that there are so many smart folks out there that are going to just keep raising the bar, and fortunate to get to work with a lot of them and hope to continue to learn and try to keep pace. So there's more to come. A rambling finish, but there's
That's awesome.
There's a lot to be excited about and a ton of fun in this industry. So
awesome. Mallory, thank you so much for your time. Good luck in the coming season and come back anytime. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks for your generosity, great questions, and opportunity to share just a little bit about what my experience has been.
Everybody, that's another episode. We'll see you. Bye.
Thank you.